Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the regularly scheduled Scio Township Planning Commission meeting for August 28th, 2023. And if you join me by standing if you can and reciting the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Roll call, Commissioner Chang.
Okay, Commissioner Moore.
Present.
Commissioner Sharma. Present. Commissioner Chang, present. Commissioner Hyde. Present. And Commissioner Culbertson.
Present.
Okay, we have a quorum.
Excellent. All right, next is the adoption of the agenda. And are there any changes or updates to the agenda?
Move to adopt.
Moved by Commissioner Hyde and
Okay.
and supported by Sharma. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Hopefully that was an aye as opposed to an aye for the nay. All right. Communications and correspondence. We did have a series of emails and correspondence posted. Anything that commissioners have received in addition to that? I do want to say, I think Doug emailed a cross-section that we should probably put in the packet.
I just emailed to you.
Oh, you did? Oh, I guess I'll have
I
to
do have
email it
copies
to.
though.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
It's of Jackson Road, for the Jackson Road corridor.
A cross section.
Yeah,
Oh,
meaning
good.
what it looks like, yeah, how wide the right of way is, where the utilities are, kind of the buildings, just
Sidewalk.
kind of an idea of, yeah, what that looks like if you are slicing it.
I noticed one of the correspondence we received was another. Air quality storage facility.
Oh, the climate, they removed the Jackson Road
Yep.
climate
Yes,
Right.
I saw
on the
that.
agenda. Okay. Yes, all right. Any other correspondence that anyone would like to note? Or may have added. All right, with that, we'll go, we have no presentations, so we'll go on to public comment. And I'll open public comment at 7:03. And people wishing to address the planning commission on matters which are not on the public hearing portion, that would be our environmental sustainability climate action plan portion of the agenda, or seek information on any other matters, please keep your oral presentations limited to 3 minutes, except representing a spokesperson of an organization, and they have 5 minutes. So with that, is there anyone here that would like to address the planning commission on anything other than the SCAT plan? Seeing none, we'll go to our public online.
We do have a hand up on the public online. Mr. Rob Pattinson. Mr. Pattinson, you have the floor. Oh, we can't hear.
Can you hear me?
There we go.
That's good.
The PUD discussion about public benefit. I was wondering, are you have any plans to, as the working session was so successful last month, that I'm hoping that maybe the PUD public benefit could be a subject for another working session, and get all three groups, the DDA, the BOT, and the Planning Commission together to begin that discussion. And then recently we've come up with some issues with conditional use approvals. And I'm wondering if the Planning Commission might want to consider putting a moratorium on conditional use approvals until Scio Township proves that it can deal with the current conditional use approvals that we have. In particular, the party barns are coming up as an issue before the Board of Trustees. And there are a couple of other ones I can't remember off the top of my head. And that might be something for the Planning Commission to consider before passing approvals on to the Board of Trustees, that until the Board of Trustees can show the Planning Commission that they can deal with those conditional use approvals, you might want to put a moratorium on that. And again, the working session was so successful. Please make that a very regular schedule. Thank you very. Oh, and last question: have you thought about scheduling it, and if so, when? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's see here. Do a couple things here. Okay, we have another person, Ms. Pam Boyd. Ms. Boyd, you have the floor.
Thank you. Good evening, Pam Boyd, a Scio resident. Rob reminded me of the public comment I wanted to make. I have some concern. I don't know how it fits with our township. There was an article last week, a Michigan township wanted more bike paths, so it required developers to pay. Now it's being sued. So my question to this commission is, can you get our attorney Jim Fink's approval for public benefit? This has for a long time been a very wishy-washy definition, and I know the commissioners have been kind of uncomfortable asking, understandably so. So I'd like to see if there is some specific language that can be used so that we don't end up with a lawsuit, because it does concern me. Thank you.
Thank you.
There are no other hands up at this time.
And I'll entertain a motion to close public comment.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Moore and supported by Commissioner Hyde. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public comment is closed at 7:07. We'll move on to public hearings this evening. We're having a public hearing on the draft of the Environmental Sustainability Climate Action Plan. And with that, we'll open the public hearing. The climate action, just as a little bit of background, the climate action plan has been the subject of working session. A couple of drafts have been posted on the website. There was a community engagement process that ACES, I should say a few of them, master's project group participated in, and we have had presentations at different Scio commissions and committees. So it has been out there a long time, and we thought it was appropriate to have our public hearing and get any final feedback from folks. There was, in the packet, there is a marked up plan, and then there's an updated summary. There were some updates to the natural ecosystems, and especially the emergency preparedness. We added the Chief Hood had wanted to recruit the Citizens Emergency Response Team, so we put that. We also thought that was a good thing to put in the plan. So that's sort of the overview of an update. And so with that, we'll go ahead and open our public hearing. And at 7:09, is there anyone present who would like to address the Planning Commission on the STEP?
Just very briefly, I served on the committee that helped to put that together, and I just wanted to voice my strong support for it. And if anyone has any particular questions that I could help with, that would be Kathy Jaskevich, Scio resident.
Thank you, Kathy. And, Kathy is our only person in Township Hall. So with that, I'll go to our folks online.
We do have some folks online, and if anyone would like to speak about the environmental sustainability plan. Tonight is the public hearing, so this will be your opportunity to speak about the plan. There are currently no hands up, so I'm stalling. Someone can put their hand up. Oh, we got a hand up. Okay.
As soon as you say.
So again, Mr. Rob Pattinson. Rob, you have the floor.
I would just like to echo Kathy's comments and also to thank Jan and Kathy and the committee for putting that environmental sustainability task force together. That was a very good bit of work. One thing that recently came up was there's a building proposed that's going to cost around $10 million to build. And if they go with sustainable materials, it adds another $1 million to the proposal. And I'm wondering how the Planning Commission will address the issue of affordability of sustainable materials and practices that I know if I was a builder and had the choice of 10 or $11 million, I would have to go with the $10 million because that's the urgent near-term need. Yeah, I wouldn't have the luxury of spending an extra $1 million on more sustainable materials, and that's going to be an issue for many builders in the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
There is a hand up. Mr. Jonathan Greenberg. Mr. Greenberg, you have the floor.
Hey, Rob, if you're looking for sustainable live edge furniture or live edge slabs, try Treat a Table. It's right here in my home. I'm just kidding.
Thanks, Jonathan.
I do want to say that the sustainability efforts were appreciated by many of us, so thank you.
Okay, we do have another hand up. Ms. Kathleen Brandt. Ms. Brandt, you have the floor.
Hi, Kathleen, Scio resident. I just wanted to make a brief comment. I appreciate that you put content in regarding the Gelman plume. That's critical to all of our efforts, and I was just reviewing that and appreciate everything you put in there. Thank you.
Just for the record, I want to say that Commissioner Reiser has joined us.
From Ohio.
From Ohio, woohoo! 7:13.
There are no other hands up online.
Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion to close our public hearing. Moved by Commissioner Moore, support by Commissioner Hyde. Any further discussion? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, public hearing is closed at 7:14. All right, with that, I wanted to open up a discussion on the environmental sustainability climate action plan. And I did want to just touch on affordability just a little bit. Because I think that is important. And I think what is interesting is, and I'm talking from an architectural standpoint, and I think there are a bunch of things that do need to happen, within the construction industry and within the design industry. And what is very interesting, if you go on the 2030 district website, the last webinar that we did at the end of last year, which I think was December, it was either a November or December webinar. It had an architect who does, it's a pretty vertically integrated developer who started in Philadelphia. And he's done a bunch of affordable housing and got the Pennsylvania housing development authority to put specifically some sustainable guidelines in there. And it took them 2 years, but now the ones that meet those guidelines are actually less expensive than the traditionally built meeting a current energy code.
So materials guidelines?
Just performance guidelines.
Yeah.
And the way they did it was changing a little bit, using more like SIP panels, and modularization, higher insulation, and making sure they were very tight, and using the ERVs that are kind of modular ERVs, and we're able to get the pricing down. But that's a challenge because it's very easy to do things the way you've always done them. And especially home builders have, you know, the way they do it, they have what shall we say, agreements to get, you know, all of their furnaces from XYZ, all of their plumbing fixtures from these sources. And so it's resourcing, you know, it is a change in the way you do things, for sure.
So there are ways, you're saying there are ways that have been developed that have worked to keep costs down if you change your design and your building philosophy.
Yeah. For instance, if you tighten an envelope and use a lot of your internal heat, especially with a home, you can, if you use a passive house standard, you can almost get away without any furnace at all. You use an ERV and you have an internal, you know, you have your internal heat. It's like, you know, a big insulated box that has an internal heat source.
What's an ERV?
Energy
Recovery ventilator kind of.
Engine recovery?
And energy. So what it does is when you bring in outside air, because you need to have fresh air, it exhausts the air, and as the two meet, they exchange. Let's say it's winter time.
Across a heat exchanger.
Yeah, it warms up the outside air coming in, so you don't have that, you don't have to increase the temperature of it as much.
You have less heat loss.
Yeah, the delta T is reduced. And so it makes things much more efficient. And that
But
tightness.
there are other ways too. They designed in chases for pipes and heating ducts so that they could put, you know, they could stack the building units, the housing units vertically.
Exactly, and
They put the air conditioning, the heat exchangers on the roof, but how do you get them to the inside unit? The person living in the middle of the building, you know, second floor out of a 3-story, they have chases that they run the ductwork on, but they have to design those in from scratch.
although they have units now, they're literally for maybe, I think it's about 600, maybe 750 square feet or so, that are like 39 inches by 15 inches by 24 inches. And they're wall mounts,
Through the wall.
plug them in through the wall, 2 ducts, ERV heat pump. Really interesting. I mean, the technologies now they're coming out with heat pump boilers for hot water heating. They have a conversion kit now for air handling units that you can convert it to VRF from gas. So there are some really interesting technologies that are being pushed in any event.
But how do these guidelines reduce costs? Because right now, there's a lot of stuff out there, but it's not
Cost effective.
Cost effective. And 2 things, I think it's gonna be a couple things. One is gonna be the first solar PV system that I installed was 7.5 cents a kilowatt hour. And now they're 2 cents or below. And that's just in about 12, 15 years, yeah. So as demand grows and mass production and you get more competition in the market, et cetera, yeah, it's.
But how did the I'm still wondering how the
Which
Pennsylvania
guidelines?
guidelines help to
Oh, you
make
mean the
materials cheaper?
The
They
guidelines didn't help. They drove the market to go
Oh, I see,
and innovate.
because they required it.
Right.
Right,
And if you don't require it, they're just gonna do it the same way they've done it.
yeah.
So it helps the environment. I mean, yeah, but then somebody figures a way to.
Right,
make it-
and part of it is because we don't have a carbon tax. You know, I mean, ultimately, we're subsidizing, I've got to be careful with my words here, but we are subsidizing fossil fuels. And, yeah, but anyway, that's sort of a philosophical, political thing that we won't solve as a planning commission.
Commissioner,
Yes,
since I was away for a couple of meetings
Yeah.
now, what are we talking about exactly, the context? The SCAP discussion?
yes.
Okay, and just to bring you up to speed here, is this some kind of a discussion around environmental
It is-
sustainability, Scio Township, is that what it is?
Yeah, so what this is,
Trying to come up with it.
the Board of Trustees passed a resolution for us to meet, to become carbon neutral as a community by 2030 and in our own operations by as a community in 2035 and Scio operations in 2030. And tasked the Environmental Task Force, the Planning Commission, gave this group the challenge of coming up with a plan to help us meet that.
Oh, great.
And so what we have tonight before us, it's gone through several drafts, is sort of a final markup and the final kind of summary of actions. And the hope is that the planning commission can recommend approval to the trustees for the plan. What's that?
So that they can act on it.
So they can act on it. They have asked to be the final approving body on that SCAP. And the idea is it's a living plan. So as circumstances change, as partnerships change, as funding availability comes up, I mean, obviously it's a living plan. And the idea is we would review it every 5 years, kind of in conjunction with the master plan, since it does fit in with a lot of ordinance review and that type of thing.
Okay,
Does that help?
that is helpful. So are we talking about certain mandates around building material, those kinds of things, or?
It doesn't have mandates, it has, yeah, if you go through, if you
Yeah.
pull up the summary of actions, that's probably the best document to take a look at. And there were multiple groups, so we took energy, buildings and infrastructure, water resources, protection and health, the transportation and mobility, green infrastructure, natural ecosystems, materials waste, resiliency, and emergency preparedness, and then regenerative agriculture and local food systems. And if you go through that document, their basic goals: increase township community energy efficiency. So we've already done some of these benchmark township operations, and then work on reducing energy and water use, connect, educational and financial resources with Scio residents and businesses to reduce their energy and municipal water use. So it goes through, and at each of those areas have some goals and then some actions. And it doesn't mandate anything. It is more of a some actions that we can take that will get our community and the township to carbon neutrality sooner than later.
Thank you.
Then the next step is, if I could,
Yes.
would the next step be changing the ordinances to match the goals? And well, this group would end up coming up with those markups, and
Maybe the BOT can handle that too.
the board of trustees would have to.
And there is the implementation recommendation too is kind of important. And what it says is there should be like a quarterly group that represents people on the township board, planning commission, the other commissions, that look at quarterly,
Where are we?
yeah, sort of prioritizing what we're doing. So there's a coordination among people in the township. You know, what, also look at, I mean, obviously, some of the stuff, especially around township operations, requires budgeting and funding. And
Prioritize.
right, and prioritizing, you know, what we're doing when, and so there's a sort of a collaboration among, and there would be sort of a quarterly meeting of that group to oversee it. And it would include some of the folks like the Environmental Sustainability Task Force would be maintained to do research. To one of the things that they're planning is an annual sustainability fair. You know, and provide resources for both the community and the township. So that's the goal of, you know, sort of how we implement it, at least a framework for implementing it.
So when I mentioned mandates, you said there are no mandates, but to me, mandates and ordinance are the same thing.
Well, there's
At
nothing in
least,
here. That would be the next step.
next step,
There's a
right?
lot of, yeah,
So,
This is
yeah,
like-
no, okay, maybe I said wrong. Would there be mandates in the future, or would there be ordinances in the
Oh, yeah.
future?
Yeah.
Probably the right thing to say. So, in my mind, this is a great document, I've read it. But having said that, I mean, these things don't happen as quickly as we would like them to, or never happen sometimes, for a long, long time, minus the presence of ordinances. So how do we feed into that from this document is my question. This is a well-meaning document, I'm sure I haven't read it, but I'm
the
sure it's well-meaning.
oversight committee.
This is like day 4, we can consider this. You gotta get up to speed.
Yeah, no, but
Sorry, what do you say?
This has been on our agenda a few times already.
Yeah,
But
So
I
at some
don't- I'm
point,
not sure
let's
you-
go over it.
okay.
But an example, all right? So we're not allowed to enforce an energy code that's different than the state energy code.
That's right.
However-
Building code and-
Right. However, in our PUD ordinance, we talked about in the sewer district having a density bonus that would be based on meeting certain more energy efficient, all electric kinds of being carbon neutral. We can do that in the PUD.
Incentivize developments based on energy carbon footprint.
Thank you.
Yep.
So,
And an example of what Ann Arbor is, I don't know if the city council passed it or not, but they're doing it's a home energy, yeah. It's some sort of reporting, and I'm not sure if it's at point of sale or when it's listed. But it's an ordinance that they passed saying that you have to,
Well, it's at first reading.
yeah, first reading, okay.
And there's gonna be a public hearing coming up at the next council meeting. There may be substitute versions of it. Something's coming down the pike. What it is remains to be seen, but it's, you know, when you sell a house, when you list a house, when you sell a house, you have to, it's like the yellow sticker on a fridge when you buy one, or the MPG on a car. It's akin to that, like an energy usage audit will happen for that house.
So you will know the cost of the,
How much does this, you know, how much to heat this house? or
Yeah,
the
right,
ener- how
then
much
it
energy
costs.
this-
is this a Michigan thing or a federal thing, or?
It's an Ann Arbor thing.
and
Another
everything.
It's a potential Ann Arbor thing. It's a proposed thing for Ann Arbor.
Have you seen this elsewhere in the country, elsewhere? I mean, is this?
Mhm. Yeah, I think there are several.
We already have it for commercial buildings, Ann Arbor does. This takes it to residential. I mean, we set it out at bigger buildings, now we're kind of
Yeah.
taking it.
So
down.
how do you determine, like for a house, how much the cost of heating would be?
By someone who's qualified to look into that and give it a score. But I don't want to talk too much about something that's pending in Ann Arbor.
Pending in Ann Arbor, but another thing that Ann Arbor did, now, Scio could never fund this, but they're requiring all commercial multifamily buildings that are 20,000 square feet or more to benchmark, meaning they have to track their energy and water use. So a lot of buildings, the tenants pay the bills and nobody really knows how well those buildings perform from an energy standpoint. Because then you can flag those buildings and say, you know, here's some,
It's a home energy
Rating.
rating. Yeah, rating disclosure, so you disclose. But it hasn't passed yet, it hasn't gone to a public hearing yet, and there could be some changes come, that are offered at the table.
The other thing would be a simple, another idea would be, we have a checklist of when people submit, they have to their site plan for approval. And they have to talk about, certain aspects of the plan and the building. For instance, when they come through the J-Rod, they have to have materials and that type of thing. It could be a simple, what's your target EUI? What are you doing from what energy code are you meeting? Are you designing above energy code or not? I mean, there could be certain things that get people thinking about energy. The other thing is, right now, from an ordinance standpoint, we don't have the ability to do a solar as a principal use. And, there's some zoning out there that we could look at to do that. And so there are some, there are a variety of ordinance things that we can do to promote it. It's very hard until that energy code adopts something that's like the zero code appendix, we can't really require it, mandate a different energy performance than code.
That state code.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay. On page 111, I think that's the packet. You talk about failing septic systems.
Yes.
And there's as a result, aging septic systems contribute to both nutrient and bacterial contamination of our surface and groundwater. So where are you getting that from?
That's actually from the Huron River Watershed Council and Washtenaw County and Huron River Watershed Council have both supported the current legislation to mandate inspections. And they're trying, they're trying to do it at a state level because one, there might be some more funding associated with it because, Washtenaw County, if they enact something like that, they'd have to figure out how to fund it too.
So I want to drill down on that a little bit.
Yep.
So, okay, the Watershed Council, and they have research that says that septic systems on Marshall Road are creating contamination or creating nutrient and bacterial contamination of our surface and groundwater.
So when a
I'll
septic
pick another
system
road.
is old, but no one knows. So when you sell a house, they know that point of sale, you have to have your field inspected.
Yes, I know about all that.
Yeah, and what they found is a lot of septic systems need to be replaced at that point
And
of
that's the
sale.
reason for that, yeah.
And so, but how long have those septic systems been failing? And a failing septic system impacts the groundwater, and if there are lakes or streams nearby, impact that.
So that's the theory,
Mhm.
that's the theory, but here you state it as though it's a fact.
That's directly from the Huron River Watershed.
Okay, well,
Council.
where are they getting that from? Do they have,
Yeah.
do they have evidence that this is happening? What's anywhere along Marshall Road, I'm just gonna pick Marshall Road because I know that road, but
I have no
anywhere
idea.
around Marshall Road, they have evidence of that happening.
What they have, if I could,
Yeah, go
what
ahead.
they have evidence of is when they detect bacteria in the waterways, they trace it back to where it comes from.
Okay,
They can identify
right,
that it's either industrial or commercial or residential and where it came from. I mean, and so
gotcha,
over and over.
that makes sense.
Yeah.
So, but
So
I
it's
just wanna say,
reverse
you
what have
don't,
to track.
I'm having a problem with this language being in here so forcefully, because A, you don't have You don't have the
So we
evidence to
need
support
to-
that. I get it on the
Yeah.
river, it's
Footnote it.
easier to find that out,
Mhm.
but, and you're gonna be creating policy ordinances because you have this in this report.
Well,
It's
we
not that I can't conceive, well, wait a minute, it's not that I can't conceive that there's contamination. Let me get, that there's nutrient and bacterial contamination of our surface groundwater from
Mhm.
failing septic systems. But to say it in a with a broad stroke, and then to go one step further and create an ordinance about it, I'm having a hard time with. Because you don't know,
I think if you look at
there's a
the-
need for us to do that.
But the actions are not to create our own ordinance, it's to support the county and to enact legislation for inspections of septic septic systems. So it's a little different than, you have to go to the actions.
And what page is that on?
So if you go to the summary of actions, underwater.
Is it before that section? I was just.
Okay, so it's a couple of things. There's,
Where's the summary of actions?
oh, that's a second document.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so what it talks with is it says, work closely with the Watershed Council and promote their programs. Okay, and then collaborate with the city of Ann Arbor in implementing their source water protection plan. So both of those things are
That's an action
collaborating.
plan.
Right.
That's part of the action plan. So we're
Yeah.
not talking about creating an ordinance inside the township.
Some of these things are not that, ones that you're saying.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
And you know, this Loch Alpine, I don't believe it's a sewer system. They have a community well.
No,
You
they
have
have their own sewer system.
I mean, I talked to a resident there, because I thought there was a sewer system, and she told me, no, they don't have a sewer system, that it was, okay, well,
Absolutely have a sewer system.
they have.
Yes.
Anno Community Well,
I don't know about the well. I know they have a sewer system. They
Yeah.
absolutely have a sewer system.
Unless it's been stolen. Yeah, there's a whole authority, there's.
well,
board.
I'm obviously misinformed.
Yeah.
Because I checked on that a long time ago when this Heritage Woods was before us. And, because I thought that they had a wastewater treatment and one of the residents, obviously, is concerned about what's going on in their community. Told me something different, but,
And part of it is an education around, so get people to voluntarily test their septic fields every 5 years or something like that. You know, because you could, I know, our field is, I'm adjacent to the river, you know, and I mean, so it's very important for me to test my field every 5 years.
and there's this linkage between what happens in the inner parts of the community, away from the Huron River.
That
So,
wouldn't be groundwater.
Then it'd be
So then we're
groundwater,
talking
Rather than
about
surface
groundwater.
water.
right?
And how would we regulate or create an action plan around that? To test the groundwater or,
In theory, you'd have to test the septic system itself.
and presume that the
Because it's-
groundwater is being
Yeah,
contaminated.
if it's leaking.
So there's no way to. So is there no way to test the aquifers?
Well, technically, when you test your well water, you test it for certain things. And you should do that periodically as well. But that would be an aquifer test that individuals could
But it
do.
would typically be deeper than the
Yeah,
field.
It's in the field, doesn't,
Right.
Yeah.
There are ways to test it, but you have to have a shallow well right adjacent to the septic field and test the water. that
Yeah, which you
See,
can't because you
you
can't
can't do
have
that
there has to be a
everywhere.
valve.
Right, so
Quite a
yes,
bit of
there's ways to
distance
do it, but you couldn't require that. Except we did do it for heritage, as part of the state's approval for that kind of system.
Right, because there's a larger risk associated with a large system failure than a.
So that's why they have the test
Individual.
wells.
Okay, but one thing that we could do, and I don't mind doing it, is doing some footnotes around some of those things.
Put links in to where the. find
Where it
their
came from.
Reports.
Mhm.
They probably could cite some.
Yeah. Yeah, it's basically, some of their programs and advocacy pieces, it's one of their key.
Yeah, I just, when I saw this, I'm like, whoa, this is a big statement here. It's not a little statement. And there's no footnoting, there's no, and as I drilled down on it with you today, it sounds like the major source of that hypothetical or idea is the properties that are along the rivers, because they can really
They can
trace
impact it
back
quickly.
too. They can trace back too, but.
And a lot of that, in Washtenaw County, we don't have lakes like a lot of the other areas in Washtenaw County where it has been. I mean, they've been actually creating their own sewer systems around lakes because they've had
So many.
so many issues, and the lots are so small, they can't physically find another spot to do a new
Septic field.
septic field.
They can remediate that one. Costs them money.
Yeah.
Often they failed for a reason though. They were
Because of the
put in
soils.
wrong spot.
Yeah. Okay, but no, that's a good point that, some of those things that were drawn from other research, we should footnote or link.
Go through it section by section.
Is this on our agenda for approval
Well, it's
or not?
discussion
Possible
and
action.
possible action, yes.
The answer is someday it will be, whether that's tonight, whether we're ready for it tonight, whether this is discussions. And then it has to go to the board and the board has to approve it, or, hopefully there's not a disconnect between the work that the students did for us and this commission and the board of trustee. And then they're gonna have to adopt resolutions and ordinances to put teeth to it, to put it into effect. That's what's gonna happen. And then we'll be limited certainly by what we're allowed to do on the building code and the energy code and the state things. There are things that municipalities sometimes want to do, but they're not allowed to do so because the state building code doesn't let us. So, that's what Jan was talking about, incentivizing things that make it greener, developments that are greener. Like we got one coming up on Zeeb and Jackson Road. There'll be an opportunity to talk to them about what they're gonna do by way of sustainability, carbon footprint, greener future, that kind of thing. So those are the kind of things that we can kind of start thinking, but that's a little bit of a sidebar to, your question about what do we do with the ESCAP tonight? Or when do we send it upstairs, so to speak?
Yeah, and I think primarily the actions are what we can do as planning commission with planning ordinances, what the township board can do with, as we electrify fleets, look at electrifying our buildings, just our township operations. And then a lot of it is education and motivating, our community so that, are there more, group solarized projects? Are more people composting? Are more people, looking into EVs? Are people looking at taking advantage of the energy efficiency and some of the IRA incentives? Do they know about them? So I think there's just a lot of, we're lining up people for the sustainability fair, and that'll be a really good opportunity for people to come and try an e-bike. Look at the difference between, what's a plug-in hybrid versus what's an EV. Are there CSAs that you can buy local produce from in the
They
township?
don't have to pay for transportation.
Right, yeah, and I'm trying to think of some of the other things that we're doing. Well, Ann Arbor Solarized program will be represented there. And some of the other things that are, master composter, rain gardener. Where can you buy native plants? How do you get rid of, why should you get rid of more of your turf grass? What's a pollinator garden? All sorts of things. It's more of a, how do individuals become more sustainable and reduce their own carbon footprints. It's a big education
holistic.
piece. Yeah, it's a holistic. Yeah. And then how can we also support Scio businesses at the same time? With the local agriculture, the resale shops, we have the urban wood folks. How do we create, sort of that energy of reuse and so forth in Scio? Yeah.
It's a whole way of thinking. We gotta change.
So that's really the purpose of this.
Ask also, once this plan is adopted, is it acceptable that we would then ask Carlisle Workman to just write up a section and how they're following, even though it's not an ordinance yet, how they're following at least the adopted guidelines? I think it's perfectly acceptable to say, well, you're either meeting it or you're not meeting it. It's not a requirement, but it can be at least be stated in the staff report. And I don't think it's a problem to at least ask them why you're not meeting this, even though it's a guideline at this time.
Yeah,
For developers.
Yeah, for every
Absolutely.
every development,
That would be-
it could have a response.
Yeah, that'd be easy enough, our report has those bars,
Yeah.
Yeah.
instead of, in addition to landscaping, we could put, standability planning, have some of the criteria, just with the understanding that it's right now, it's not required, but.
But we're looking for
I
it.
mean, we look favorably on
Yeah.
projects that are trying to adhere to those
That'd be
guidelines.
easy enough to add to
Yeah.
our current review.
Can we, without an ordinance, can we still start using those guidelines in our approval process? Is it allowed, legal?
For,
Uh,
you can only, by right, it really is does it meet or not meet the ordinance? Where if it's a conditional use or a PUD, then there are other.
No ordinance comes later, obviously. I'm saying that if we decide on a certain set of criteria around water or sustainability or solar or appliances or whatever, or all of the above, and then use that criteria in our discussions and our approval process.
So no, we can't, because remember, we can't get ahead of the state code.
No, well, yeah, but
But that's what Jane was saying. She said, except for if it's a conditional use, we don't have to grant the condition unless you meet, you're working towards our goals.
Right now,
When it's conditional, we can decide if they've met the conditions.
okay, so then maybe that's something we ought to focus in the background while the ordinances get, which will take a certain amount of time, I don't know how much time, I don't know.
But for instance, it doesn't hurt to talk about it, because think about blank slate, okay?
because we
They
have been,
weren't- they
since I've
weren't-
been on the commission, and we started out with
Yeah.
EVs.
We-
I'll never
we
forget
do,
that,
but
that
not in
project that Chris
systematic
took the
fashion,
lead
we
on
haven't.
that, the dental office project. So we have been doing it slowly. We're kind of, we've built over the last 3 years into this.
Well, we do, I have observed that, but we ask a question, okay, well, do you think you may do this or you may not do this, and your choice. But I'm saying, again, I'm asking a question, I'm not saying this is right or wrong or even permissible. my question actually was, is it permissible to have a certain criteria, things I mentioned earlier, and then say, this is going to be our criteria in giving preferential treatment to certain projects when they come to our.
We can do
front of us.
it in the conditional use and the PUD projects, because we have more leverage.
Okay,
But
fine,
because we can't, we can't go against the
Start
state
small.
code,
Start
but we are
small.
starting to. So for instance, the
Lithia,
Woodview Commons, we got them
Yeah.
to use solar and EVs. We got, solar, if you, so we have been doing it, we have been edging developers in that direction. And
Right.
one of the biggest
Without a formal
projects.
cheat, without a formal cheat sheet,
with-
and that's what I,
Without a formal cheat sheet.
exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Without any real authority except for our PUD up and down vote.
But, doing the
Exactly, performance
review,
cheat sheet.
doing a checklist, just having them respond to those
Exactly.
things.
Exactly, puts pressure.
Right.
Puts pressure. Right now, we are saying, do you have it? Flavor of the day. If I remember to ask for appliances, I do. If I don't, who cares? He doesn't remember that either. You don't remember either. It's not a formal cheat sheet.
I get you.
And that's what I'm
So
saying.
like the
So
Suburban,
you
what's
can
it-
have.
In other
the-
words, this is how
Lithia.
we,
Lithia, like the Suburban, I mean, they're like gonna be the model. I mean, they're all electric except for their backup generator stuff is gonna be gas, but they're all electric. And I don't know how that happened, where they went there. I don't know if they're just superstar developers or they got the message that we did not like another dealership. And they decided to shift and they saw the benefit of doing that, but they have gone way over here. I mean, far beyond anything we could have forced them into or asked them to do, is a better way of putting it.
they
So
grew
it's,
into it.
pardon me?
They grew into it.
They grew into it.
During multiple discussions, some of which I was part of, some of which I was not.
Mhm.
They grew into it. What I'm saying is, there's no growing into it. That takes time and energy and is kind
Well,
of,
right now, that's all we got,
that's why.
except for a PUD
That's what I'm
and a
saying,
conditional
a
use.
formal cheat sheet,
Yeah.
that could be the inspiration of our ordinance in the future. Which could be the inspiration and the foundational stone of our ordinance in the future.
Is that
Well,
something that you could
actually-
put together, Madam Chair?
I could do that with Carlisle Wortman. I think we could add it to the reviews, but also have it as a part of the submittal process. How are they addressing these things?
It's something for
I mean,
us as
the first thing
commissioners
is-
to understand.
Let's have our own teeth. I mean, the ordinance is the real teeth, I agree, but let's have our own teeth, maybe baby teeth,
And the ordinance,
maybe
of course,
milk teeth.
and
No,
some
I
of these
agree with
things
you.
could end up in the ordinance. That's where the real team
Right.
comes. I mean, if you can suggest what you want. So if it's not in your ordinance and it's a site plan, the developer can tell you to go pound sand, basically.
so,
And if it meets ordinance requirements for a set site plan, the township has no discretion but to approve it. You start to have teeth if you actually put something in your ordinance to review. Special land use or conditional land use has some discretion, PUD has a lot of discretion.
so, and I have some thoughts about that. One of the things that a lot of residents can't do because they live in homeowner associations, condo associations, subdivisions where they can't, where they have to have grass instead of native plants, where they can only have one, you only have to have one tree instead of several trees, or, where, you can't have a clothesline, which means you gotta use the dryer. So, I don't even get me started about chickens or whatever, but there are other things out there that some people do by way of sustainability and climate change.
They're not allowed to do.
What we might want to consider as a planning commission is, hey, developer, you want to come in, we're not going to let you ban clotheslines, or we're not gonna make you put Kentucky rye or fescue or Kentucky blue or rye or fescue, whatever the traditional grasses are. We're gonna say that you're going to allow native plantings, at least in, between the sidewalk and the whatever, maybe not in the extension or right away, but so we should give some thoughts as to what developers do that when they come in to put in tracts of housing that might not, would
That's
we,
a good point.
do we need a grass that requires watering? So it's just something.
Fertilizing.
Yeah, I'm just, I'm just throwing it out there.
Well,
Like,
you
there are things
you
that-
could limit the amount of turf grass to, you know, active recreational areas, and require, you know, native planting, you know, you could restrict.
But they're all gonna come in, they're all
irrigation
gonna be
and all that.
green, they're all gonna have sprinkler systems in them, they're all gonna ban clotheslines, they're all gonna ban, other,
Yeah, there's solar on the,
You know,
on the
I'm not saying Scio
front.
Township is ready for backyard chickens yet, but if they should be.
We've got 'em.
They should, well, I know, but they should be allowed in certain places, that's just my, where the density or the usage is appropriate but I mean, HOAs do things that aren't best, that might not comport with our climate ASCAP, that's all I'm saying.
Let's take a simple example. Can we have a developer allow for clothesline? Can we force a developer to have that as part of our approval process? I would ask the
Right
basic
now.
question. Yes or no?
Could we in the future, you're saying?
Yeah, tomorrow morning, let's say, a developer comes here. If
Well, no, let's say after we put the right ordinance in place.
not ordinance.
On a PUD, we could.
PUD,
Yeah, but with respect to, we could say no developer shall entertain or, no project will, we call it solar, not, or wind power or whatever, like, well, how about solar power? Or would we allow solar power? If they wanted to do it right now?
Yep.
Yeah,
We- in
yeah,
fact, we did
we can, but we can't do it as a primary use. It can only be associated with another use. So if you had, let's say a farmer or an adjacent lot or something like that, you could not put solar on
okay, so,
as the primary use of that.
Why is that? Is that?
We don't have, we don't have an ordinance that allows it. So that's one thing we have to work on.
Okay, I know, but, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I just wanted to say, as a point of order here.
Yes.
These are the goals. Then just like with the master plan, you set your goals in your plan. And then you write your ordinances to match your goals. If they're not in the plan, how do you know, what's your justification for writing the ordinance? So first we set what our community goals are, then we write the ordinances and we make the requirements. And then we go from there. So part of the goals are set here, and then from this, you can start extracting your checklist, your cheat sheet, whatever you want to call it. So this is
Right,
like
that's
the
a long
first
term,
step.
that's a long, but I like the idea of the cheat sheet for us,
Sure.
because
The
we're using these concepts already.
we have to,
We've been using
we
them
have to
already.
start somewhere.
But what are we basing it on? So we base it on
the
what-
document there
Yes,
and
there
your own
you go.
ideas, and your own associated ideas. Some ideas may not be, the closed line is not in the document,
No.
but it's your idea, right? So chickens are not in the document, but it's your idea.
I have a question.
And I think
How
that-
much leeway do we have over the HOA? I mean, does the township have review the HOA agreements, or is that just totally something that we don't?
The master deed bylaws are typically reviewed as kind of a perfunctory attorney review almost after the project's approved. Like planning commission doesn't really see the master deed bylaws. That's where those standards come into effect.
Okay.
Township board does, but I kind of doubt they really go into a lot of detail on the master deed bylaws. But that's something we could look at the ordinances to make sure the planning commission is seeing that documentation before it goes to the township board, because right now that typically doesn't happen. Typically it goes kind of bypasses the planning commission with the township board.
Basic question for you. So let's stay with example clothesline. So we want to use that as a criteria. How would the very briefly, how would the PUD be created? How would the PUD be rolled out? I want a clothesline. I want to tell the developer you have to have a clothesline. And we don't have time for ordinance, and it'll take a time, certain time to have an ordinance, whatever. How do I do the PUD? Just very briefly.
If you were a developer who wanted to do that, or we
No,
want to?
Scio Township wants to require developers to have a clothesline in every backyard.
It would happen to this commission.
Yeah, you guys would
It
talk
would be a
about it
condition.
and you guys would talk about it. Hopefully it would be kind of bundled with the other environmental standards and not
Right.
just clotheslines. But, and that could be part of their public benefit. That could be part of their benefit, that they're doing things that meet the SCAP plan. And that could be one of them, you know, so. it would be-
Or that
it would be up
word.
to the planning commission, you know, without a strict ordinance, it's up to your own judgment and discussion for these things to come up.
But that starts at the pre-meetings.
It does.
Yes.
That's what the
Ex-
checklist
exactly.
should start.
That
Exactly,
starts like, hey, listen,
exactly.
you've got a board and a planning commission especially that's committed to environmental practices. So don't be surprised if they ask you about, you know, solar and wind power and other kinds of non-fossil fuel kind of energies, whether it's
What building codes you-
whatever power, nuclear plant, I don't know. But, you know, whatever, non-fossil fuel. That just starts early.
I just want a copy of it.
I mean, we could give at pre-application meetings, we could give people a summary of actions.
And I just realized that what got uploaded was not what I sent Fran.
Oh,
It wasn't an updated action thing. It wasn't, you guys, I sent, when I
Did you
sent it
not?
to everyone.
You sent a summary of some changes at one point.
It was the action plan summary. I do not know why it was an old one that got uploaded. It was not
Kept
the one I
summary
sent
of
them.
actions in July.
Right, and there's the one that should have gotten uploaded, should have said revision 1 on it. And it did not, the right one did not get uploaded.
Would that be the July 24th one?
is it dated on the document? Oh, no.
If it doesn't have a date, I put a date from the time it was emailed to me, so I'll check the
Okay.
document.
But if you look, it's, the one that uploaded didn't have the implementation
No,
plan on it.
doesn't.
Right.
And it did not have the kind of synopsis of the SCAP. It was an old one for some reason.
That's what you said, it was a separate document.
Yeah.
Earlier.
So we'll just have to make sure the correct one gets uploaded. But I think
So you're gonna send that up to us, an updated?
well, I think you got it. It,
In an
Well, you
email?
just said
It's
this
coming
wasn't
down.
it.
In an email, you mean?
what got uploaded wasn't, but I think what got emailed was.
Oh,
I just sent it again, just to,
okay.
because there were a couple of them that got used before, because we've talked about this a couple times, so I think it may have just been because it didn't have the added resilience pieces in it from the fire chief and so forth. So anyway, thoughts, I mean, do you want to bring it back on our next meeting?
Would we have time, if we did that, would we have time to get our footnotes to cite sources for certain things we'd have to
I
scrub?
will
it?
put them in by hand.
Do you think we have time?
What I want to do is, because we have, you know, the graphic person that does the actual plan, like I updated it by hand. But I can put those footnotes in. Want me to do that?
Well, if, that would be a reason to bring it back, because, and then we could perhaps, anybody that sees anything besides what Memorial could let Jan know, and she could make sure she cites that.
This document is chock full.
Yeah.
I started reviewing it today, and I have to be honest, I did not get through the whole document.
That'd be another reason to bring it back.
And
I'm
just,
sure I'm not the only
just
one.
for, yeah, everybody, it's been online since
Yes.
June. And we've had it
And
in
how
our
long have you
packet.
been working on it?
2 years.
Okay. I like that when I was a new commissioner, and all of a sudden I had to vote on a master plan
Yeah.
that had been worked on for at least a year.
Okay,
two-
then we can just move on then tonight. And so folks, if there are some things, just, you know, if you wanna circle it and send me, you know, we need a footnote here, or question, this isn't clear, or something like that. And then we'll bring it back, yeah.
But how do we engage in the dialogue where we develop the so-called cheat sheet? And how do you want to do that? How do you want to orchestrate that?
That'll be,
After
These two guys are gonna
after
put
this
it
is
together.
adopted.
So a cheat sheet is kind of a summary of our goals and what we're looking for, objectives with respect to sustainability in the development process.
Good way to put
Yep.
it. Starting at the pre-submission.
So once you get it and you see something that needs to be added, then.
Summary may not be the right word. The word would be
A
a
list.
target list. It may have
Just a list.
details, or it may not have details depending upon our individual knowledge or intelligence about that topic.
Right,
We may not have enough adequate intelligence at this stage.
But that's
like you mentioned
summary,
ERBs, and I
target
asked you,
list.
what does that mean? Or you mentioned something else that I didn't.
Well, that was in the discussion, you mean,
Mhm.
not, or if we have any acronyms that aren't spelled out in the plan, we
Yeah.
definitely.
In the appendix, there are a lot of
Well-
definitions,
Yeah,
but, yeah.
yeah.
I'm a
And
quick study, I just need a checklist. I don't need a dissertation, just a checklist.
just a checklist. Yeah, and in fact, our little submission checklist needs updating anyway, so we can work on that.
So we're kind of talking like factors or in develop, like climate friendly factors that in development. In like PUDs or.
I think it can be stronger, just like we've posed, we have these goals of carbon neutrality by this time. How is this project gonna meet those goals?
But here's my
Yeah.
concern. What happens if we come up with these great things, but the BOT wants something else? They want pathways,
Then we
they
do it
want a
their way.
ladder truck, they want this.
They give the final say.
I know that, but my point, but then it's a little, not bait and switch, but then then everything gets
Oh, I
switched
see.
up. It
the
really
developer.
complicates it. It's a, you know, so
But we're already doing it.
I know.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Yeah.
Our checklist
Our
is gonna have to be
priorities
approved.
are different.
We can't just make up our own priorities.
Yeah, we can't go rogue, not that we're going rogue, but we
Right.
gotta have buy-in from the BOT.
So once
We
we
value
come up with-
that, but we also value this, or we value this more, or we value this differently.
Good point.
Because there's like
No, I
infrastructure,
agree.
sewer, and water.
Yep.
There's fire station or ladder truck.
Because it's not our
there's
intent to
pathways.
jerk
There's like
around the
a,
developers.
there's a litany,
Yeah.
and it can't all go toward, you know, the solar panels on the roof or in the park
Well,
or something.
John, in keeping with that, I think you make a great point. Let's get the checklist done. Let's
And then I can share
run it
with
by us
I
and
can
send it
share
to
with
the
them.
BOT.
Yeah, and
I
get
give them-
feedback.
I give them a bi-weekly or monthly or bi-monthly report, you know, I'll give them a report. It'll have an attachment to that when and if it comes, so I'll keep them in the loop,
But
but
it also needs to be a.
How would that interfere with the fire trucks and all that? I mean, I'm not clear.
Oh, I think it has to do with public benefit.
yeah,
and-
if we're
and-
talking about benefits for the environmentally, and if some of these have an economic cost, you know, and some of them might have an economic cost, whether it's EV stations or whether it's doing something, you know, some of them don't have economic costs, but to the extent that sustainability and the SCAP plan puts an economic cost on developers, then there's gonna be a bigger picture at the board level of, is that the economic benefit that we want for the entire
And
township?
that is going to be the biggest challenge. I'm glad you brought it up. Putting a clothesline costs
glad.
money. Putting more expensive appliances costs money.
I'm
Putting
not
an
talking
area for
about,
hens in the backyard also costs money.
I'm not talking about having them put in
I
clotheslines.
know, but you understood the
I'm
example.
just saying,
So all
don't
these.
ban them. I'm not saying a developer has to put in a damn clothesline or a chicken coop. I'm just saying.
He can't prohibit
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
So here's the thing, I'm fine with that, and I think we should be speaking with one voice.
Yeah.
Because we shouldn't be jerking around developers. The idea is to
Yeah.
get something achieved here.
So
So, but, I guess that, like you say, you're gonna be reporting back to them.
I will.
They need to be ready to act on it. We've been there, like the joint meeting that we had with
That
them.
was
These are
helpful.
things that we have been discussing for at least a couple years now. It was good to have us all there because it's bringing them along in some ways. 'Cause
And
I don't know
another-
how much you guys talk about this stuff. at your
And maybe
board
another
meeting.
special meeting related to community benefit, public benefit.
Yeah, well, I think
Parse that out.
Rob's,
Parse that out.
Rob's
Patents and stuff.
idea was, yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yep. I
Not
think that's-
necessarily on PUDs,
So it
but
sounds
public
like we're gonna
benefit.
get the list together. It's gonna be shared with the rest of the commissioners. It's gonna be shared with the BOT. And then how you guys work out, we're on board with that. There's some way we need you, a resolution, a motion, or to communicate with us that you're on board with that. And I presume that's some discussions they're gonna have with you, Madam Chair. So that's how I see the
Or through-
system happening
yeah,
between
done.
the two.
Okay, no, I think that's good. I think, we'll
I like this discussion.
give people, and then,
You like it?
and we're already have a list of some of the ordinances that we're working on. So it's not like, I don't want to feel like we keep delaying it. We're still integrating some of the things as we're moving along. But I do want, my goal would have this through, just John, through BOT before we have our sustainability fair.
When is
Because
that?
October, end of
Oc-
October.
end
Oh,
of
we got
October.
plenty of time.
September 1st is Friday.
I'll make it a point to
So-
You're
read.
talking about the SCAP, right? So do we have the most recent SCAP?
Yes.
There was a
June
marked up
19th.
one. Yeah, the June.
Okay, the June 19th, yep.
And I
okay.
marked up a few things, and then the
Yep.
summary document is, we
It
updated
says Rev 1.
the Rev 1 one.
Got it.
Yep,
But you're not gonna have the most recent plan because she's gonna put footnotes in, et cetera. So we're gonna get another.
I'm gonna add a
Updated.
little footnote, the footnotes,
Yeah,
but
no,
that's fine. I mean, those are, it's not content, it's providing support for the statements, where they came from.
So can we say that we're putting it off, we're not putting it off, we're going to have this come back up for discussion and approval at the next meeting?
At the next meeting.
And everybody, please be prepared to provide any markups at that point that would be our final
So
yea or nay vote.
Yep.
based on-
And so, because I wanna say, this has come to us for discussion. We have not discussed it in some meetings we've discussed it a little bit,
Right.
but we have not really delved into this. This is the first time we've had, I mean, without being bombarded with a lot of other projects on our agenda. So in all fairness, I mean,
That's
So
fine.
at some point, it sounds like we're gonna move on to the next agenda item, but it is set for a public hearing. So at some point, can I move to open the public hearing?
I
Because of-
already did
Oh.
and closed it. You missed it.
Okay, good, okay.
We had Rob Pattinson and Jonathan Greenberg, Kathleen Brandt.
And I will listen to those comments on the replay. I was dropping my daughter off in Ohio, so.
Yeah.
Thank you for their comments.
did you think we wouldn't have the public comment?
No, I thought that was public comment rather than public hearing.
No,
I wanna make
we
sure.
held our
I didn't wanna
public
miss it
hearing.
if we didn't do it yet.
Yep, and so I think
With
that's
4
fair,
people
and
speak.
so I think if planning commissioners can be prepared either ahead of time or at the meeting to provide critique at any updates and so forth, and then we can, put that together
And we
get
only-
it in front of the board.
We only have one meeting in September.
Well, that's why I put that doodle poll out, so that we can work on
Another meeting.
Jackson Road corridor, some of these other ordinances that have been floating out there.
Okay, so, but what I'm asking, I guess I'm asking is that when we need to be ready? What meeting are we planning on this for action?
Hopefully
September
September 11th.
25th?
We don't have one on the 25th. Because that's, it, unfortunately,
That's where we set that Honey Creek Park,
I
business
know,
park.
we did, didn't we?
Yeah,
But it's-
that's, yeah, we do. The one on the 11th, but then Jeff Newman
And the
couldn't come, so
holiday,
we
you
set it
know,
for the
It's
25th.
interesting because it's listed in the, all the, online, but if you look in the calendar, it isn't because it's Yom Kippur.
It's up to it's really up to the township. I would just say that there have been other cases where we still held planning commission meetings when the office was closed during the day. So that's an option.
Okay,
I'd
so,
be inclined to have the meeting on the 25th. We set that.
yeah, we did
particular
set
for
that
Mr.
one, didn't
Human,
we?
Commissioner Human and the developer to be here on the 25th.
Okay,
Unless somebody has an objection and wants to observe Yom Kippur.
but
So
I
you're
would
saying
like
we-
this, I'm sorry,
No, we would like to discuss the SCAP though,
on the 11th.
on the 11th.
Yeah, because it'll take, that will give the board adequate time, because this
They
is a
probably
big
wouldn't-
document.
Would they even be able to see it on the 26th? They're 2 weeks from that would be barely in time for them, so. That's the end of September then.
And then there's October, it could go, it'll be in October is my guess, but at least that gives them a couple meetings if they need it. But it would be really nice to have it done by the sustainability fair.
If the Board of Trustees were so inclined to accept the thought that this is essentially what it will end up looking like when it comes to them, they could start reviewing it now.
That's true.
I was suggesting that to
To John.
Right.
To
maybe suggest
mention that.
to them. It's gonna take a while.
Okay. Right. Then we'll move on to our, and we'll handle scheduling at, during the report.
Oh.
Okay, we'll grab that. Okay, so Jackson Road zoning and overlay district discussion. Moving on. Thank you very much, Kathy, for coming.
You can stay for the rest.
That's our J-Rod. So I would just say that I went to that training recently, the non-motorized and complete streets that Eagle put on. And it got me going with ideas, and in particular, looking at the Ferndale example, and the mayor, she did a presentation. But what was really good about the Ferndale example is that they've been dealing with Woodward, which is, we're dealing with Jackson, so there was some comparability there in what they're doing, so that was interesting. She talked a lot about, similar to what we're doing with the sustainability stuff, passing your plan for this, passing your plan, getting it in ordinance form, and then dealing with the community, and then setting out your plan for making the changes. But a lot of it had to do with Woodward, in particular, had to do with crosswalks and changing of parking, not having 4 lanes on each side of Woodward, but maybe only 3, and putting in some bike stuff and putting in and actually some parking too. So that was kind of interesting. It got me going about where we're at with Jackson Road, ideas about Jackson Road. So
Is Woodward a truck line?
I would imagine. And they had to, a little bit different for us, even though our Jackson Road goes beyond our border. She worked with the other communities along Woodward, and they had similar issues about, their residents had similar issues about Woodward that her community in Fairfield had. So.
I mean, advantage of Woodward is you've got density all along it, businesses all along it. The problem with Jackson is you drive 60 miles an hour from one section to another section.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, so it's like we need like a downtown kind of near, I don't know, session room and the movie theater, and then a downtown out there and, you know, slow down pedestrians, or, I don't know.
Well, the way I mean, they
We do
have
it
the
in
same
phases.
interests about pedestrian and bike that we do. Pedestrian, she didn't mention so much about residential, development along Woodward, but more of the pedestrian walking and getting across Woodward and bikes and all that kind of stuff, which is kind of what we're
But
talking
people
about.
live near there. People don't
That's
really
true, the
live-
neighborhoods are
people
right
don't
off
live,
Woodward, that's true.
You know, Luella
Yeah.
aside.
And one of the things in the
Roads.
discussion that became clear to me is that, I think maybe you brought this up at our last meeting, John, is that we need to widen our walkways along.
Which we can do from an ordinance
Oh,
standpoint, you know, with our pathways and stuff along.
And is that something that the DDA could? Is that something that we can, I'm kind of,
Do you want me to, could they pay for it?
is that something that we would look for the DDA? Because obviously we don't, I mean, obviously when we have a builder in mind for a certain section, we can incorporate that, but once we change our ordinance, but is that something that the DDA?
Are they 5 feet right now?
Yeah.
And you wanna go to 8 foot? So is it a good use of money to spend is it a good use of money to spend it on making a 5-foot path that people don't use to an 8-foot path that people don't use? I mean, we gotta get people who live there or use it. We got, I mean,
So you see
I'm
that as a
asking
first-
Priority.
A first step.
Yeah,
Well, and I do want to also report that we did have an initial meeting with SEMCOG, and they connected the ESTF people working on some satellite metrics with their GIS person. And I haven't heard back. They were gonna connect us with the transportation resources too. And there are grants available through SEMCOG, planning grants for transportation. So part of it is, rather than piecemeal, yeah, well, let's, you know, go to 8-foot pathways. You know, it's more looking at it holistically from a multimodal standpoint. And so that will take, you know, some expertise that the township doesn't have, and
Right.
Carlisle Workman doesn't have transportation planners.
You know.
Yeah, so hopefully we'll hear back from SEMCOG, because I think that's a key element to making Jackson Road work and identifying where
And I'm going
makes
to
sense.
a Region 9 MISTA meeting tomorrow to hear about funding for affordable housing. There's a whole effort at the state level to key into housing and affordable housing. And so they're working, they got their state plan, and now they're trying to spread out into the communities to let them know what's available. So I'm gonna be keenly looking. They asked me why I was interested in coming to the meeting. I said, I want to know more about affordable housing funding. So I'm see.
Yeah, and also, I think, you know, key contact resources for different aspects of community development, so that's good to know. Okay, yeah,
I have a question, and it's, I don't know if this is appropriate or not at this point, but we're talking Jackson Road corridor. Would it be appropriate to talk the sewer and water district
yeah,
entirely, rather than just Jackson Road corridor? Because as you said, you've got very little residential right now, but it's just adjacent to it in the sewer and water district. You could have more. I think if we set up these areas that we want to put in form-based zoning, perhaps we will find fruit elsewhere Going
And-
down Liberty, I mean, going down toward Liberty, going
And
down
it-
Wagner Road.
that
toward
encloses,
Liberty.
so one of the things that might be a reasonable idea is to align the J-Rod with the sewer district.
Pretty darn close.
Yeah,
It is really
but
close.
it's really close, but.
On the J-Rod, don't we wanna pick a spot? I mean, we gotta start somewhere on this, right? Or like, we can't form, or maybe we can. Can we form-based mixed use the whole damn stretch?
Up to a point.
Or do we start somewhere, like, we tried here, or do we do it in nodes?
Mhm.
Or, and then we try to connect these nodes, or we do it where residency is most likely to happen based on current uses or the availability of the land or the development, and then we put one on the east side, the middle, the west side, I don't know, we put one on Z, I mean, how do you incorporate that? How do you best incorporate the mixed use form-based onto that stretch? But I think the key for any of that is getting residency there, whether it's apartments, whether it's condos, whether it's on the second floor, whether it's higher, or am I wrong on that? Don't you need?
No, I think you're right.
No, I think you're right, you have to have density,
That would be the
Yeah.
priority.
Well, density is residential density?
but yeah, residential density, people,
Residential,
Yes.
density.
residency.
Residency.
Yeah, residency. That's, how come that hasn't come up before? I haven't heard that one before.
You got a point there.
It's better than chickens and clotheslines.
But I think there were kind of two things that resonated with me from the discussion, and one was the sort of kind of looking at Jackson Road two ways. One, the nodes, but also looking at south versus north.
Yeah.
So I thought there were, kind of two things there.
You mean freeway side, non-freeway side?
Yes. North, south of Jackson.
North of Jackson's.
Part of that might depend where we have the land,
Yeah.
sadly,
Mhm.
you know.
But there's more residential connectivity
Right.
options
Yeah,
from the south
Yeah.
as opposed to from
to the
Unless you can
freeway.
get that bridge put in.
the.
No, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
and it's right next to the freeway, so, maybe you put certain uses on the freeway side and residential stuff on that side, and you do crosswalks to it.
I don't know that we have to limit ourselves. I mean, we're asking
Right, let's see.
quality, the PUD, the Quality Theater, they're looking at residential on the north side, so.
I don't know if they're looking at it, or if that's just one of the uses, are they really looking at
And
it?
if we required it, or if we encouraged it,
We have
We
been
do.
encouraging,
We
I've been
encourage it.
encouraging.
I know that, but whether they're looking at it, or whether they just wanna sell it to some, there are a lot of other uses that they could do
Yes.
that far been their person might specialize
we can't tell what they really are getting feedback
Yeah, we're meeting with them Thursday.
Find out more. What a sense of what they really wanna do, like, oh, we wanna do this.
Yeah, so going back to planning, I think it's reasonable to focus on some things.
on.
And
Areas, you mean?
what?
Areas?
Mhm.
Okay.
And also know that there's more opportunity for residential from the south. So it's kind of the combination of those things. And then there are always developer opportunities that come up, as you're doing it, but at least you can.
So there's two things that are happening for me right now.
Uh-huh.
We're talking about SIMCOG planning grants. This is gonna be some time. Or do we talk tonight about these clusters we see right now?
That's what we're
Sorry.
talking about.
Right, no, well, I hear it, but we're, it's kind of like we're talking two different things. I mean, we're talking planning grants for long-term, but we're also talking about, in the near term, identifying some cluster areas. Is that what I'm hearing people say? No.
Yeah, I think so.
I would like to try a mixed use form based in clustered areas where we can work residential into the equation.
And I'm not opposed to being on the north side of Jackson.
Mhm.
I am not. I mean, it's a transit corridor. So, and those were some vacant properties there.
Yeah, that's the problem is those might, I don't know if there's opportunities. The developers might, which ones they want to buy, which one's for sale, which one's available. I mean, some of that's gonna be market driven as to what's available, right?
But if the policy is put in place before they come up with their plans, then of course they have to tailor them to the new policy.
Right.
Or the old one, if we don't have it. So if we don't do it, that's why when you say, should we just pick an area and do that? I don't think you said this in these words, but to the exclusion of all the rest of the areas. Right, you didn't say that.
No.
If we only pick one area, instead of trying to see what makes sense for all of it, and maybe we can't come to an agreement on every one of them to begin with, but.
No, I mean, there's a lot of kind of rural stuff in there. There's a lot of, kind of near the Lithia, around in that area that, and there's just.
I think we've got a lot of this information currently in the master plan that I can bring, I'm just kind of hearing some directions for that we can maybe take a next step. We're still distilling the results from the meeting, the joint meeting we had. So we're gonna have kind of a little summary report on that, which might help us kind of funnel our thoughts as well. But I think in the current master plan, we've got some good existing land use maps that we can start to look at that will kind of show where some of the existing residential nodes are within the corridor, where some of the existing industrial and commercial nodes are. We have a fair amount of industrial and office and commercial within the corridor currently. And I think this is gonna be an old fashioned me throwing up a bunch of maps and having you guys react to some things during the planning commission meeting.
So
I think that's where we can, to me, that's the way I'd like to see this.
So
I'm fine with that, but let me just say this, clusters. In my mind, I'm thinking about, you kind of alluded to this a little earlier, John. One cluster is around the Session area in the Carlisle and the beer pub. What's that place called that's off Jackson Plaza?
The homes.
Home brewery, that's one cluster. And obviously, there's not any residential going in there, but that's a community interest stuff. And then there's another cluster that could happen around where that Lithia is going in, because there's some residential that can go in there on that south side. And then a third cluster can be, and this is no order, these are just ideas that I have, can be the Z Jackson Road.
Right,
And that property,
Old Panera, that.
right, that's on Jackson, that's right next to, CVS. And then another cluster is where we already have a residential building going on, Woodview Commons and Baker, on Jackson East. And that can be a cluster that we can look at. What do we want to go in there to help promote? They have to put in some retail on the front end of Jackson as a part of that project, but we want to also promote some of that. So those are 4 different clusters in my mind, and those are just ideas that we can start to work on and say, well, what makes sense first or whatever. I'm not trying to override what you're saying. I'm just saying, I'm just trying to put some meat to the bones. These are 4 clusters that I.
And I'm fine with that, but how do we promote it while not stepping in it on the way there, like letting every drive-in restaurant come in through there, or letting.
That's why I think we need to define the zones.
Let's have it all car washes, all storage units. I mean, do we, so we gotta be pickier on the PUDs and like.
Well, we'll be using this as a guideline once we establish it.
And I think you might, one of the things that came up is even with Pittsfield, they had some different uses and some different guidelines depending on certain areas. So you could have the node kind of requirements, uses, that might be minimum 2-story or something like that. And then in between, you still bring the buildings up close to Jackson Road, but you may not have you may have a little different
But
piece there.
but even though we're quote unquote planning commission, we're
Yeah.
also a reactive commission. We react to the proposals that people bring us, whether it's for conditional uses, whether it's for rezoning, whether it's for PUDs, whether it's for by rights, you know.
Yeah.
So they bring us stuff.
Yes.
So how do we hang out the not welcome here sign and please bring us this? Is that through the line? Or to?
So I think the first step is to say, these are some areas of interest, some clusters of interest that we're thinking of. We don't have to be fixed on it, but we gotta start somewhere. And then we say, do we wanna create some JROD/form-based zoning around these clusters?
So there's two things that I need to have conversations, so I don't wanna.
And because if we don't start making some changes, we are gonna continue to be reactive. Right now, without the changes, we gotta get the changes in place, otherwise we can't stop the way the system works now.
So I wanna broach with the board, when I do these reports and, you know, and I wanna say, listen, the planning commission is looking for guidance, cooperation, communication related to the public benefits associated with PUDs, especially in light of the forthcoming escape plan, correct? The sustainability plan, like what role is sustainability gonna have in public benefits, so we could start incorporating those, because that's coming down the pike. And number two is the vision for Jackson Road. And what kind of things do you wanna see there by way of developments? Are you looking for residential? Are you looking to pull things out? Are you looking for these, and do you wanna do it all the way along the road, or do we start somewhere and, you know,
So I guess, so
that
planning,
correct?
well,
Yeah, that is
no,
correct.
no.
But the
Planning
order-
is in the purview of the planning commission. Obviously, the board of trustees has the final say. So I would rather say, number two, as these are some of the things that we're looking at.
Okay.
We're looking at these
I'm
clusters perhaps, and I'm just
No, I'm-
throwing it out there, people. If I'm wrong, we can talk about how I'm wrong or
This is what we're
something
thinking
else.
about. Let us know.
So we're looking at these 4 clusters.
Don't be surprised if you see things listed.
Nothing fine tuned, these are clustered areas that we're thinking about incorporating non-motorized, complete streets, form-based ordinance, as well as development of mixed use with residential. Now, obviously, the Jackson-Wagner area, there isn't a lot of room for residential development there, unless quality comes in that way, but they're not, yeah. But the Jackson near Lithium project on the south side, that's one area. And then the Jackson Z, there's that parcel that I've already said to the developers in the pre-app meeting, we'd love to see some development of residential in there. And then near Woodview Commons, we already have the residential development. We just need to add the pieces to it. Pieces meaning crosswalks, pieces meaning what? Form-based along there, so that when somebody wants to come in and develop on that north side where we have a chemical plant that's shut down, we know what we want to go in there.
Adding on to that, I see, okay, perhaps in those where you see the concentrations, maybe that's an area where it has to be, when we say mixed use, we mean residential and commercial. We don't mean different types of commercial.
Right.
Okay, so.
Like a dry cleaning and a nail salon.
Yeah, right.
We got both.
So there's a requirement for residential at those nodes. And that's the type of mixed up use that we're talking about.
Supporting commercial.
And those also might have higher height limits, all of those things. So you're really driving the density, because one of the things that does is it increases then the value of that property, and that's what desirability to develop it. I think the question becomes, to me, I think that's where you really focus, it makes sense to drive that density. The question is, okay, in between those nodes, what do we do? And I think we've already said, you know, we're taking out storage, we're taking out probably drive-throughs. Drive-throughs may, you know, just exist, you know, at certain freeway kind of
industrial
pieces.
areas.
You know, there, you know, I think we could come up, to me, you know, that's what you do. You densify, require residential, and then there's the discussion of what happens in between. And I'd be interested too, Chris, and from Doug, from a planning standpoint, you know, it wouldn't preclude residential in those areas or higher density and stuff, but it might.
So
be a
we're
little bit-
requiring residential in certain dense districts, commercially dense districts now, as part of a mixed use.
Yeah. Now, what I would also like to see is you're having discussions with the quality, what is it, quality 16?
Mhm.
Yeah,
Plus, what's the other development? Is it called Crossroads?
Crossroads at Liberty and Wagner.
How many REUs are that gonna, you know, we're gonna be capped out on our REUs. So it's not like we're gonna start building all of these mixed-use high-rise type developments. Once those, do we have an idea of how many REUs
Yes.
potentially
They
those
said
two could
3
use?
to 4 of.
Because we've got, what,
that
1,200
size.
approximately? Is that what my recollection was?
Yeah.
How much are those two developments possibly going to take?
they're already taking up.
Is that already
That's a-
included in that 1,200
I believe so.
calculation?
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got
That's
1,200.
what they
Okay.
said.
Yeah, well, Crossroads wasn't included.
Are you sure? It was a proposed one.
No, only approved.
Okay.
What do you mean?
Only approved ones
we
were
t-
included in Stacy's calculation, or OEM's
Right,
calculation.
Right, so if we, and she
She
said
said it was
3 to
Stacy's
4.
Stacy's online.
Oh, well, we
So,
might be able to get the answer.
yeah,
right?
so it was 3 to 4.
Stacy?
So
Yeah.
we only have
Let's
so
hear
many
from somebody who knows what
REUs
she's
to get
talking
this
about.
density.
Mhm.
She just-
Where are you getting
she
that
just hung
fact,
up.
Ms. Janko?
That's what they've said multiple times.
Let's not make it up. Let's talk to the pro.
Yes.
Stacy, are you awake?
I'm here.
Hello.
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
It's REUs.
How are you?
Did the REUs of 1,200 remaining REUs, did that take into consideration the Crossroads project at Liberty and Wagner?
I don't believe so because it wasn't originally residential and it never made it to BOT, I don't think.
So do we have a guesstimate of how many that potentially would take?
I do not know offhand. They haven't resubmitted in a while and I don't believe the REU number was included in their last information.
Does anybody recall how many units were proposed out there?
It's past the POD, but was it a preliminary or not final?
Preliminary only.
Okay.
They're coming back.
It was a big development.
Yeah, and
They're gonna be amending that. They're gonna get rid of that back part, those townhouses. So they're gonna lose some units.
You were
but the conversations were 3 to 4 Woodview common sized projects.
Yeah, so.
And the
And
answer is-
Crossroads would be one.
We need to start the discussions
so
for
it's
the
3 at
negotiations
Mhm.
now.
I'm saying that.
I know.
Negotiations for
Saying
what?
that.
now?
I know,
For negotiations for what?
between Ann Arbor and Scio
Oh,
Township for increase, you know,
More
what do we want a
flushes.
contract for? We may get turned down, but we need to have the discussion.
And so we have basically around, going back to yours, I mean, there's Lithia, there's Z, there's Baker.
Let's not leave any area out or we'll lose the ability to control. You know what I'm saying? I'd like to have the outlines of these all butt together. If we say this area and this area, let's make sure that we have a division between them identified so that we cover the whole corridor. Otherwise,
No, we're not covering the whole. That's the whole point for having the knots. We're not covering the whole corridor.
then it's
So-
gonna look like this here, and then it's gonna skip,
Yeah.
and it's gonna look like something.
We don't have
different,
a
right?
we don't have a
Yeah.
downtown. We got a
Until we get there,
corridor.
yeah, Bob, until we get there.
Did you, everybody saw this map of what Pittsfield did? So it's basically color coded along the whole stretch. I mean, they didn't leave out gaps and then let everybody do what they want.
But it's different in the different color codings.
Exactly.
Right.
So we set up the node here, but we have the boundary surrounding that so that it butts into the boundary of the next one.
Yeah, there's the list of uses that would be preferred in those districts.
Right.
Yeah.
See what I'm saying?
I'm just trying to get us going on it.
Right, but you're saying in here, it makes sense to do this, and over here, it makes sense to do that. Let's just make sure that we merge these so that.
For simplicity reasons, it'd be nice to keep it as one type of zoning. Again, I'm only using it as Ann Arbor as an example, that they've done it on State Street, they've done it on Stadium Boulevard, they're going to do it on Plymouth, they're gonna do it on Washtenaw. And it's just, they want simplicity, it's all under one type of zoning. So they don't have nodes there, and those are all major transit corridors.
But this is my but.
But they have water and sewer along all of those also, so they can do those things. That's gonna be, a minimum of 2 stories and ban.
We do
indoor
along
storage.
Jackson Road too.
So
Yeah, but
just
why
take
have
that
unlimited water?
into consideration. It may be easier to rezone the whole thing. And yes, you're gonna have a lot of existing non-conforming uses there, but that's fine. They're existing non-conforming.
And in these different areas that I mentioned,
Nothing new.
we can say,
Yeah.
it makes sense for us to start with, let's say Wagner and Jackson and Baker and Jackson, because we got the Baker, just east of Baker, we got the Commons coming in, we also have the Trove. What is that behind, there's a whole housing development behind Menards. Now that goes a little bit ways,
Trailwoods.
is that Trailwoods?
That's Trailwoods.
Now that's a little bit ways down from where.
Yeah. But what I'm concerned
No,
about
but-
is, and this is the sewer thing, is if you wanted to require residential as a part of it, it'd be really difficult for us to do that all the way.
Oh, I think the ATA goes down to Minor. It stops there. I mean, that's what Z Road. That may be appropriate from Wagner to Z. Say, that's where the bus line is, that's our transit corridor. That's where it'd be probably most appropriate to start putting, form-based zoning. That we're going to require mixed uses there between those 2 points.
A mix of what?
Between Z and
Residential
Baker.
and whatever, because it's gonna be a minimum of 2, maybe you make it 3 stories. But we only have so many REUs, so we can't really,
Yeah.
I think we can burn through those pretty quick.
Chris, what were you saying? The corridor between Z and Baker?
No, Zeeb and Wagner start, because
Or
that's where the
Jackson.
bus doesn't
Yeah,
go
Wagner.
further out there to the west. So that's where the buses run, that's our transit corridor, that's our mixed use area.
Empty lots there along the way?
There's some,
There's some, right?
oh, right there at the Lithium Motors, in that area.
On the south side, there's a whole big area, woods.
Again, I would say you can call it TC1, you can call it whatever we want to call it, transit corridor. But you can have different use zones within there. And that's what I really think we're trying to come up with here. What do which area do we want to have this set of uses for? And which area do we want to have these others?
Yeah, they keep us all happy.
Yeah, but you can have it all be the same
Yeah, under the same.
designation. Although if we get into form-based zoning, it's not gonna be TC1, for instance. It's not gonna be like that.
Oh, okay. There could be some variations to it.
And then the question is, do you run it also down Wagner?
RM.
Because right now, it goes, so it would go Liberty,
I'd like to see that because we could tie in with some of the other developments.
The Baker?
Crossroads. Well, she said down Wagner.
Wagner to Liberty.
Yeah, it already, but how much?
Yeah,
space do we
I
have
would
there?
too.
J-Rod already goes down.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, you're right.
And the sewer goes there.
Yep.
Right.
And hopefully we'll have a fire station to serve that higher
There should be
density.
a little restaurant or something there, yeah.
It should be, or some
Billboards.
stores. So,
Okay, does that give you?
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, I get it. I get what you're talking about.
started.
You and I should talk next before we put this on the agenda. Mapping and brainstorming, and yes.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a little REU count too, depending on,
count.
maybe
So-
Thursday you get a
so-
better idea of what the Quality 16 is proposing.
So, not by show of hands, that would be a vote, but I guess by consensus, or maybe I might ask, is there interest on this body to start a discussion about additional REUs in the years to come?
Sure.
Like, like,
I've always felt like that was not in our domain, so, but
Right.
I'm.
no,
happy
but
to
planning
see-
is in our domain, and you can't plan without toilets.
And we.
Write that down. That's my,
Residential.
my
Res-
FYI.
You're on fire
residency
today.
and-
You can't plan without
That's your
toilets.
Einstein moment.
I would flip that.
No, but no.
I'd flip that
No
statement.
planning without
Ins-
toilets.
Instead of saying, is there interest to have RU discussion? I would say the planning commission is looking at making higher density, and we can't do that until we get approval of more RU.
Is the board interested in
So we-
discussions about additional REUs to support that vision, that goal? Okay,
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to
okay.
put it.
We set the goals.
Not necessarily extending the boundaries of the sewer district, but
Capacity.
the
yeah.
capacity of the sewer
Yep.
district.
Well, you just.
I know, there's a little,
So,
Don't
you know,
limit
when we
your
were at our
discussion.
joint meeting last time, I kept saying it, but I was trying to make a point.
Yeah, we
And
drew
we're
it.
kind of, no, we're fine. We're kind of getting to that intersection on different things that we bring up. AE, what you report back to them, how do we bring them in? When do we, the cheat sheet and all this. And I was suggesting at that joint meeting that we have a working group between the DOT and the planning commission, because I think it's better to bring people in and keep that continuity. Because I think the board of trustees, they are bombarded with the whole picture of the township. You know, I've looked at their agenda and it's huge. So I don't know, I throw that out there as a way to deal with some of these issues that have risen today, like the water and how do we keep them on board with this and that and cheat sheet and that. So, so anyway, that, I bring that to our attention again, just to say is,
just as a,
or you
I'm just trying to, what I'm thinking of is, okay, I think John is a good test of, these are the things that we're considering and the direction what we're discussing in the direction, you know, we want to get a little
Yeah,
bit
the
of
PC
feedback.
wants to go.
But I think once we get to a point where we have a little bit more visual, so it's not, okay, because people, I think we had pretty good agreement on some of the conceptual stuff of the density of the housing, the multimodal, that we heard. But once you get into more of the detail of it, that's when people start, you know, having,
Disagreements.
there's a little more context.
that's
or
my
something.
point of facilitating that.
Yeah.
A joint.
But we have to
working group.
get there,
And I would say
I think.
to Kim's point, it wouldn't be odd in Scio's history to have a working group that meets outside of regular planning commission or township board meetings. A few of each, you know, couple planning commission, couple township board, maybe a couple DDA.
I think that would be
And we
good.
would have like early morning, when we first initiated the whole pathway plan, we met 7:30 in the morning here, and we had a working group that included people from.
I'm up at 5 with my puppies.
Including
I can
people
do
from, including people from the city of Dexter at the time. And so having like a working group that meets, because you know, today's an oddity that we don't have a bunch of stuff on the
Right.
agenda. And it becomes very difficult to get into these kind of discussions with a full planning commission, particularly when we have a site plan and conditional land use and PUD and we're here, you know. So I'm just throwing that out there. I agree with Commissioner Moore in that setting up some, at some point, not right now, but at some step, having a working group that might include some board members and DDA that meets outside of the regular planning commission. Probably a good idea. And then, of course, those ideas would be brought to the planning commission for own thoughts. So, and we've done that, that's a common way that we've done our planning in the past.
Keep pushing.
Yeah, because it goes faster then.
But Jan, you and I should probably talk.
Yeah.
Next.
So about the form-based.
Yeah.
Is it the commissioner's view that when we do a form-based zoning along Jackson to Baker, we do form-based zoning in the clusters? We do, clearly that's an important piece we need to get in place as quickly as we can.
We don't know, we have to work that out.
Okay.
I don't know how that works.
I'd be okay with it stopping at Z, not to Baker.
Okay,
But you could do a form-based go for those nodes and then do standard zoning in different areas, or you could have various levels of form-based standards as you progress along Jackson Road. They don't have to be identified. Those have to be identified on a map.
but if we don't do it whole cloth, so to speak, we're gonna be reacting to ones that are left out, and these other environmental storage businesses and all this are gonna crop up. That's why I'm asking, do we need to?
Personally, I'd like to do the whole cloth. I'd
Yeah,
like
we
to
could
see
do the
us-
whole thing, but I'm not saying we
You
leave it
can't
the way it
focus on
is. I'm not saying.
everything in one
Yeah,
stuff.
absolutely, absolutely.
But we can lay it out and then let it be sort of amorphous until we nail down the details.
Because I think at some point, transit,
In between.
it would make sense for transit to go all the way to Baker and then Baker into Dexter as a fixed line.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
What about the
doesn't do
transit?
it now.
Exactly.
Talking about
Exactly.
transit?
I agree.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
Cause there's that senior center that's gonna be there.
Yep.
Yep.
There's gonna be
And Woodview
Heritage
Commons,
Woods,
you're
Woodview,
starting to.
you're
There's
starting to.
residential there,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So
Remember to
I
get
need to
extended.
leave pretty soon, so I don't know how late we're gonna be here tonight, but I
I'd
would
like to move along.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll end that discussion and we'll just bring it back, and I think once. Well, I think it makes sense to do the, and we talked about that in the discussion, to do the DDA board and planning commission.
Makes sense.
When do they meet?
Makes sense.
DDA every other month on,
What's that?
they meet every other
I think
month,
they meet in the morning.
noontime, I think. But anyway, it's on the
calendar?
calendar. All right, so, go ahead.
One question about the REUs. REUs, more capacity, more flushes, or do we wanna reconcile or match up where we have water with where we have sewer? Cause part of, you know what I mean, or TBD on that, because we're gonna get, if we have water but no sewer, we're gonna get on-site sewer requests all the time. So just be prepared for that. If we say, here's where our water is, here's where our sewer is, here's where you build. Otherwise, we're gonna say, we wanna build here, but we're gonna build our own toilet factory. You know, on-site sewer.
Which they can do, they could do anyway.
That's what he's saying.
You mean anyway, anywhere, anywhere?
But it can't because we have districts. So like District 4,
No, but-
District 3, you have to be in a
But
water
the-
sewer
No, but
district.
it's a lot easier to put a subdivision in if you got water than if you got wells.
Yeah,
Oh, you're talking
I
residential.
don't necessarily agree with that. Water is easy. I've never heard of a development not happening because they didn't have water.
Well, we're talking of limiting PUDs to the Jackson Road corridor.
Sewer's the issue. Sewer's the issue. And our water district is so
That'll get
enormous.
rid of the community.
Yeah, but our water
wells and woods.
district is different than where we have water capacity or ability.
I
It's like the southern 2/3 of the township. You know, it's like,
But there's some areas that one of the concerns, if you expanded the sewer to everywhere we had water, would be, you'd have to do that after you really looked at zoning densities and the PUDs and
well,
stuff
I'm
like
really
that,
just
because
talking
that
about,
would,
I'm just talking on the freeway. I'm just really talking about Bakerwood. Do we put, we've got I'm only talking
the
about.
freeway intersection at
yeah,
Baker.
We've got Baker, do we wanna go from Baker to Marshall and stop there? Cause you know, you've got truck stops there, you've got other things that probably shouldn't be on sewer, but they are, so, you know.
That probably should be on sewer that
That's what I
aren't.
meant, yeah, that's right, and then,
I'm losing you. We already have it set up that it stops.
It doesn't go across the freeway.
no.
The water district stops at
The-
Marshall.
The water
The
district.
sewer
I'm talking-
district stops at 94.
That's right, and we have things south, we have commercial south of 94 that's on well and septic. I'm septic, I meant, septic, I meant. What's that?
We have commercial that has
Yes,
that,
yes.
like who?
They're on the Baker South on the east side. Those businesses
Like the pilot gas station?
and
Oh, yeah, all the Baker stuff, all those, all the truck stops are in there, gigantic septics. They're on their own septics.
Oh, okay. I didn't
And
know.
then also
Alright.
the other one is.
they'll come to your house someday, the water table.
Newman Boulevard, that industrial
Can't wait.
park just north of there is all on septic too.
So I'm talking about reconciling.
That's investor,
I
right?
got you now.
I'm visioning for the future.
But the high school,
Well, that's a
Dexter
lot.
ran,
That has a
Well, there's some big ass
dedicated line
septics.
that only can serve the high school.
that only can serve the high school, interesting.
From.
So I guess that's the one question is, should that be part of the discussion of trying to get those commercial entities with commercial, because Heritage Woods did commit that in the future public benefit, that they would hook up to our public sewer someday, so
We
that.
gave it to them.
Or, yeah, and all those houses, all those residential that wanna be commercial, you know, along there, that might be, that's where I wanna drive it.
The answer is, I think
Off right
that
up,
we need
you
to
know, within a stone's
reconcile
throw of the freeway.
water and sewer and not just be talking about Jackson Road. That's why I was saying we shouldn't be talking about the whole water and sewer district. But now I guess you're right, they don't all align. So we should have the discussion on how to align.
Like when Doug's talking maps, we've got the J-Rod map, we've got the water map, we've got the sewer map, and there's probably another kind of map you could throw in there for
Yeah, the
zoning.
overlay map.
And then we have contracts with Ann Arbor that don't necessarily match up either, so.
Well, that's my
That's
point,
the
and that's the
discussion you
planning,
were-
that's the plan, like, hey, what are we gonna do? Is it gonna meet our needs in 100 years? No, 50? I don't know, probably not. How about 20? How about 10? How
I
about
think the
8?
statement was 10.
The contracts are 10 years.
Well, yeah, but the 1,200 REUs is gonna, we won't be done in 5, but we might be done in 10. That was the kind of statement.
But that depends on what comes in,
It does,
not the way we're talking. We're big spenders with
that's
the,
right,
with the toilets.
that's right. So don't wait 10 years.
Right, that, I guess, okay, all right.
Okay, but I think that we should add to our agenda and really it's the highway commercial district. And whether planning
Yeah.
sewer, I mean, that's really what
I
it
mean,
is.
I'm not saying, hey, no, I'm talking about freeway off ramp, freeway.
Well,
All right, let's move on. Are you
Yeah.
okay, moving on?
Thank you.
All right, then.
You drove us there and then you hijacked it.
Mhm.
No, you needed to.
Okay, reports, has anyone met since our last meeting?
No, but I did want to say that the Huron River Watershed Council is having their annual fundraiser called Suds on the Water. And if anybody that is listening would like to go to it, it's like I said, it's a fundraiser for the Huron River Watershed Council, and I'm trying to find their website that you can go to. It costs money, of course, because they're looking for donations. Where is that?
What date and when?
Yeah.
It is September 7th, 2023, from 6 to 9 p.m. at Delhi Park. And just so happens it's in Scio Township. There we go. And they have, it's 100, I think you'll find it's $125 for non-members, and probably nobody is a member if they're needing this information given to them. And you go to their website, HRWC, Huron River Watershed Council.org/suds.
Do they feed us or anything?
Oh, they feed you, they give you
Food, it's
music.
Suds.
This is beer and
Food and
food.
suds.
Yep. You want that? You can have that. Anybody who wants,
Carla, we've been a pretty major sponsor.
got more invites, but you go to their website, hrwc.org/suds.
And that's actually why I wanted to change our ESTF meeting.
Oh, you're gonna be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to say.
Thank you for that.
Thank you.
It is a,
Okay. All right, I will take this if nobody else wants to.
okay. Well, there are a couple more there.
Oh, okay.
All right.
Oh, this goes with.
Okay, then the other thing, as a part of my report, it sounds like we are gonna have a meeting on the 25th, so that takes care of one of them. So we just need to find, I sent out a doodle poll, did everyone,
Delinquent.
okay,
Yeah, I got that, but they wanted to, I didn't accept the cookies because they want to send me stuff. I'll set your
That's
meeting
why,
up.
that's
Set
the
your-
same reason, I'm glad
set
you
your
said
meeting.
that, I said
I'm
that to
not-
Jay.
I'm not
and he
doing
said,
that.
I hate
I'll
Oh,
just
you
set your,
did.
set your meeting, I'll be there.
oh,
I don't
you-
need cookies.
all you do is you run your cleaner every day and you get
One
rid
more
of all
thing,
your
I need
cookies.
I got 3 emails, I'm not doing it. Tell me when to be there.
It's very simple, how come you can't just put some dates down, multiple dates on the day?
So much for doodle polls.
I'll
Let me
do
know when
it,
to be
I'll
there.
do it, I'll do it.
All right, you'll be there, no matter what, okay. Chris, you did respond, thank you.
I did.
Okay.
Just don't bother
Like
me.
that.
We're lawyers, we don't give permission for it.
No, I know cookies over here,
I always
I'll give
remove
out cookies.
42,000 trackers every
Yeah.
couple days.
Any more
Anyway,
reports?
Okay, any more reports? All right, minutes? Oh, did you have anything? You didn't, you,
No, my report now is being provided to the township board. And if you're interested in what's happening in the Scio Township Planning Department, it's all.
okay, and will you continue to give us your
So-
report?
So Doug, about that, it does, Joyce does give it to us on our Friday reports. Those go to trustees. I don't know the extent to which that is
I don't get
disseminated.
that.
I don't know if Joyce sends it to, if you send it to Christie, or I could say something to Joyce, if you send it to Christie Aiken, it can go under reports, and that might be helpful. Because I don't know that Joyce,
Yeah, I think I called the manager's report, or it's my manager's report, so. Yeah, actually, yeah, right now it's going to the township manager, and I assume she was, distributed.
she is to the board, but to the, I'm looking right now at tomorrow's packet updated to see if it's included, and if it's not, I can
I thought
permission.
we were gonna get a copy of that.
I will start, if I didn't do that, we'll try to put that in your packet.
Yes, because I think you did it once, but we appreciated it, because it's a good, as just a part of your report, it can go in the packet. Okay,
Move to approve the minutes.
all right. Did anyone have any additions or revisions to the minutes?
Permission to tell Joyce to put it, thanks. No, call the question?
So I
Moved.
You moved it, I'm
I
calling.
moved it. Just seconded.
Yeah, just second it. Okay, supervisor. Okay.
That
Any
was a
further
slick way of saying,
discussion?
where we're at, where are we at?
No, I know we're.
All right, any further discussion on the minutes? All right, we can do it by, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, the minutes are approved as posted. Any other items? Entertain a
Move
motion
to
for.
adjourn.
Motion
Right
by Moore and seconded by Hyde. Oh,
Sure.
Sharma seconded. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, thank you, everyone.
So am I wrong to